Hey everyone, welcome to the investor.bet AFL Round 17 betting trends preview. In this video, I'm going to run through, we have a full slate of 9 games this weekend. No teams have a bye, and we're going to preview each game. I'm going to go through who I think is going to win and why and how I'm approaching betting on these games. I'm going to analyze the stats, the betting trends, everything you need to make the best betting decisions for the games this weekend and profit on the AFL. Before we go through this week's games though, I want to quickly review what happened last week. So looking at the matches, on Thursday, Port Adelaide beat Carlton 110-60. On Friday, the Bulldogs beat the Swans 105-96. Saturday started with the Suns beating Melbourne 104-85, Hawthorn 150-65 over North Melbourne, and then Collingwood got a bit of a scare by the Eagles, ended up winning by 29 points, 88-59. And then on Sunday, the Crows comfortably beat Richmond 122-54, and then a tight game between Fremantle and St Kilda, with the Dockers winning at home 81-69. Home teams won 5 of the 7 games. The only away teams to win were the Bulldogs and also the Crows. Away teams, though, covered the spread in 4 of the 7 games. So far this season, away teams are covering just more than the home teams, 69-65 against the spread overall. Favorites won every single game, so every team who won was the starting favorite, but underdogs covered the spread in 4 of the 7 games, so slightly more underdogs covered than favorites. This round has now given the underdogs a winning record on the season, 68-66 against the spread overall. Port Adelaide versus Carlton, Hawthorn versus North Melbourne, and Adelaide versus Richmond, they were the 3 favourites who did cover the spread in their wins. 5 of the 7 games went over the total, 76-58 under on the season though. So this round flipped it around. So basically from round 8 through to halfway through round 15, almost not every game, but vast majority of the games all went under the total. So now that flipped around last week, so we'll see if that continues this weekend. Looking at how the ladder stands, Collingwood clear on top, 10 points, 2.5 wins clear of the Brisbane Lions, who are in outright second position. Then you have 4 teams tied from 3rd in the Crows down to Fremantle in 6th, all on 40 competition points with 10 wins, 5 losses. Now, whilst basically from 10th down is you're not out of the running, Port Adelaide still have a slim chance, but from 11th down, definitely those sides can't make finals from this point. It'll take, I shouldn't say they can't, it's extremely unlikely for them to make finals. Basically, it'll take them winning every game from here on out for the rest of the season. And it'll take 2 of the teams from 7th, so the Western Bulldogs, Gold Coast, or GWS, to lose the majority of games on their run home. And whilst maybe one of them will lose a few extra games, it's very unlikely that 2 of them will, plus Port Adelaide will win out. So whilst the run for the top 8 isn't looking like it's going to have that many teams involved, it's basically 1 to 9 fighting for top 8 spots, the run for top 4 definitely sets up really well because there's only 1 win between 3rd and 9th on the ladder. So those positions can change drastically week to week as to whether you get the double chance to finish top 4 or you're in an elimination final, whether that be at home in 5th or 6th or on the road in 7th or 8th. That where those teams finish on the ladder in terms of spots sets up to be a very interesting race through the final rounds, which is good because that means majority of the games can still be worth a lot as the season goes on. Now, looking ahead to this weekend, the first game, North Melbourne versus the Western Bulldogs. This game on the Thursday night at Marvel Stadium. The Bulldogs are big favourites for this game. Currently, looking at the odds, the Bulldogs are $1.09 and the line is minus 40.5. As I'm recording this video, there's no total points lines out for any game this weekend. So I'm just going to give you what I think the total should be. And then when those totals are announced or later in the week, when I lock in my bets in the AFL bet finders, which you can access through the link in the description, then we can make the decisions on those. But they're a bit slow with the totals this week. Now, for this game, the Bulldogs have won the past 8 against North Melbourne. Last time they met was round 1 this season, and the Bulldogs won that game 113 to 97. They had 28 scoring shots to 27, and the Bulldogs led for the entire game. So they scored first in the game, led 33 to 10 at quarter time, led by 10 points at halftime. So the North Melbourne fought back, kicking 5 goals to 3 in the second term. Fairly even third quarter, both teams kicking 4 goals during that quarter. And then last quarter, the Bulldogs kicked 5 goals to 4 to run out 16-point winners to get the season underway. The stats for that game, obviously, the Bulldogs had slightly one extra scoring shot, but they had 9 more inside 50s for the game. And North Melbourne won the centre clearances 17 to 11. Stoppages were even. Both teams made hardly any turnovers in that game, and it was still 210 points scored. So I think that sets up for this to be a high-scoring game. 8 of the past 9 head-to-head have gone over the total. Solid numbers of conversion rates inside 50. North Melbourne leading into this game have gone 2-2 since their bye, but are coming off their biggest loss of the season. Last week they lost by 85 points against Hawthorn down in Tasmania. 150 to 65 was the final score. Their next biggest loss of the season was against Carlton back in round 6. Getting to Marvel obviously suits both sides. North Melbourne played good down in Tasmania generally, but Marvel is a home ground for both of these teams. North Melbourne have covered 3 of their last 4. Their last game against Hawthorn went over. Hawthorn pretty much got the over themselves with the 150 points. North Melbourne only needed to kick a goal and a bit to get that full game to go over. That was their first game to go over after having 7 straight games go under the total. The Western Bulldogs, they've won 3 straight coming into this, beating Sydney last week 105 to 96. They've scored 105 plus in each of their last 3 games, and they've scored 96 or more in 10 of their last 11. The only exception was against Hawthorn, where they got 59 points at this venue. They've played 3 of their last 4 games at Marvel, and Bulldogs will be winning this game. I also think it'll be high scoring. 8 of the past 9 between these sides have gone over. Bulldogs, their last 3 have gone over. Last week, North Melbourne's game went over, and they did score 97 against the Western Bulldogs earlier on this season, which wasn't their highest score of this season, but it was their second highest score that they've had all season. 125 against Melbourne at Marvel as well was their highest score. Bulldogs are the number 1 scoring side. North Melbourne ranked 16th in points conceded and one of the most inefficient defenses. Bulldogs will run up a score here. North Melbourne will find enough points. I make a fair total for this game at 180.5. But I think it'll be very high scoring. I'd be surprised if we see less than 175 points in this game by the end of it. North Melbourne have covered 3 of the past 4, so they've been hanging around in games, and I think they'll find enough points to keep it somewhat close with the handicap at 40.5. I don't really like taking big favourites with the minus, but Bulldogs to win, and there be points. Then we have Carlton versus Collingwood. Collingwood $1.23 favourite, minus 25.5. Currently no total for this game. 6 of the past 7 though head-to-head have gone under. I'll share with you. Make a fair total for this game, 165.5. Collingwood, 5 of their last 6 have gone under, and Carlton, 12 of 15 on the season have gone under. So both these teams favouring the unders. Collingwood are the number 1 defensive side. Carlton ranked 8th defensively. Collingwood the slightly better attacking side. Collingwood will win this game, and it will be leaning towards the under. The Pies have won 6 of the past 7 versus Carlton and covered in 5 of those wins as well. And the past 17 between these sides have been decided by 1 to 29 points. So historically, it's been a close game. Carlton have lost 2 straight leading in against bottom 6 teams and have failed to cover 5 of their last 6. So they're really not coming into this game in good form. And Collingwood, and basically their season ended last week with that loss over in Adelaide. And Collingwood have won 13 of their past 14, including the last 7 straight. That last time they met, which was round 4 this season, where Collingwood won 63 to 46. It was a pretty low scoring game, particularly in the second quarter. There's only 1 goal scored in the second quarter of this game, and 3 goals in the last term, which 2 of those 3 goals came by Carlton, which bridged the margin back a little bit. Collingwood were out leading by over 30 points early on in the fourth quarter there. This game was pretty close at halftime. Carlton were leading by 4 points, 29-25, but dominant 4 goals to nothing, and effectively 5 goals, because it was 30 points to 1 in that third quarter, what was ultimately won the game for Collingwood. Collingwood were inaccurate, so were Carlton. Collingwood 23 scoring shots, 8 goals 15 to Carlton 6 goals 10, 16 scoring shots. Collingwood led the inside 50s 57-44. Carlton had 24-15 free kicks. Stoppages were dominated by Collingwood 39-31. It was a pretty high stoppage game. Turnovers, Carlton made 10 more turnovers than Collingwood in this game. So looking at how they met earlier on in the season, and Collingwood still obviously playing very well and extremely hard to beat. I think they'll get over the line. I don't think they'll win by a big margin. I wouldn't be laying the 25.5 points. As potentially with that game last week, Carlton may have had an eye on Collingwood this week in what is like a home Friday night game against Collingwood. So it does set up nicely for them at the MCG that they may have had an eye looking ahead to this game, which put them off early against Port Adelaide, but don't really see a way Collingwood drop this game. It'll just be a letdown performance, and they showed glimpses of struggling a bit again to put West Coast away last week, which definitely is concerning, but I think getting back to the MCG will help them compared to playing at Marvel. So Collingwood to win, leaning to the unders. The other game on Friday night, over in WA at Optus Stadium, West Coast at home against GWS. The Giants are the same odds as Collingwood, $1.23, a minus 25.5, no total, but 4 of the past 5 head-to-head have gone over the total. At least one team in this matchup has scored at least 100 points in the last 4 meetings. I make a fair total for this game, 162.5. Last time they met was round 4 this season, and GWS won that game 132-51, so it was 183 points scored. The Giants had 32 scoring shots to the Eagles, just 16. That was at NG Stadium in Sydney this time. They're meeting over in Perth. GWS started well and just kept on building on their lead. It was a bit of an even match through the second and third terms, but GWS definitely dominated the first and last quarter. They kicked 5 goals to 1 in the first term, and then 6 goals to 1 in the last quarter. Statistically, for this game, the Giants had 119 additional disposals. They were plus 7 inside 50, 62-55. Free kicks favored the Eagles, 24-13. Clearances in the middle at the center were 18-10 in favor of GWS, but stoppages were pretty even, and turnovers were fairly even as well for this game. GWS had 113 marks, the Eagles just 60. The Giants 28 marks inside 50 to just 5 for the West Coast Eagles. Expect GWS off the bye to go over there and win this game. They've had 12 days rest leading into this, beating the Gold Coast Suns 106-99. Prior to that, beat the Brisbane Lions 107-96 leading into their bye. That's really strong form. Both these teams were in the top 6 going into those games against GWS. So for them to come away with 2 wins, they've now won 4 of their last 5. I think they're well positioned to pick up a win here against West Coast off of the bye. The Eagles come into this losing 5 straight games, and they're on a 6-day turnaround after playing that game against Collingwood at Marvel Stadium, but in fairness, they definitely played well, exceeded expectations. They were 60-point underdogs in that game and only lost by 22 points. But difficult to travel back, half the rest of the opposition and now having to travel back home. Their last 3 games have gone under the total, and that's due to the fact they've scored 62 or less in 4 of their last 5 games. Don't think they have enough scoring power to beat GWS, who've had back-to-back games scoring 100 plus. The Giants significantly better attack and also better defensive side. They're ranked in the top half of the competition, both in attack and defensive metrics, and their efficiency numbers as well are very good. Particularly defensively, GWS give up the least number of goals per inside 50 entry for the opponent, which for West Coast who have only 47.7 inside 50s per game, which ranks them 15th in the league. Definitely doesn't set up well for them. They also rank last in goals per inside 50. It's really hard to see West Coast kicking a big enough score to win this game. So, like the Giants to win comfortably. No real lean on the total, I think. It'll depend what number, obviously, goes up. I don't have a strong lean towards it being high scoring or low scoring. Expect we'll see around a 160 type scoreline for this game. And I do like GWS to cover the spread. They've won their last 3 against the Eagles, all by 52 or more points, and they've won and covered 4 of the past 5 overall. Most of those have been at home though, just the one on the road, because West Coast have won 4 of the past 5 versus GWS. But you have to go back to 2020 and beyond for those games, and West Coast were a lot better back during that period than the side that they are right now. Essendon versus Gold Coast. The Suns are favourites, $1.30, minus 21.5. We have a lot of teams this week who are all around that 3 to 4 goal handicap. Gold Coast have won and covered the past 2 versus Essendon. Last time they met was round 22 last season. Now, this was at Marvel Stadium. You may remember it. Gold Coast kicked a goal after the siren to win the game. Mac Andrew slotting it for his 4th goal of the game, which Gold Coast were trailing by 5 points when he lined up for that shot. He kicked the goal for them to win by 1, 87 to 86. Essendon had 26 scoring shots. Gold Coast only had 22, but the Suns were the more accurate of the 2 teams. And it was a game that kind of went back and forth, multiple lead changes. Essendon were trying to hang on by less than a goal for most of the last term. Just couldn't quite get there in the end. Essendon led the inside 50, 62 to 51. They also had 8 extra free kicks. Gold Coast won the stoppages 27 to 20, but Essendon won the centre clearances 17 to 10. Turnovers were fairly even, marks fairly even, marks inside 50 fairly even as well. As the scoreline suggests, there wasn't a great deal between the 2 teams, but Essendon should have won this game with an extra 9 inside 50s and also an extra 5 scoring shots for the game. So their accuracy and it was definitely the ultimate thing that cost them there. Essendon are off the bye here. They've had 16 days since their last matchup, which was the loss against Fremantle in Perth. So they've lost 4 in a row effectively leading into this. They've conceded 104 or more in their last 2 games and have failed to score over 72 points in 8 of their last 9 games. If that continues here, they don't have enough scoring power to beat a Gold Coast Sun side who we know has points in them. Need to be able to do it on the road, but with this game being at Marvel Stadium, I don't think they'll have too much of an issue scoring there. In comparison to other venues, they're averaging 94 points a game this season, which is 4th best in the league, whereas Essendon ranked 3rd worst at just 72 per game. Gold Coast also the better defensive side. Just comes down to, can they get it done on the road? And I think they're well positioned here to do that. They've had 7 days since their win over Melbourne. So it's not a short turnaround or anything like that. That win against Melbourne also broke a 3-game losing streak. And I really like the fact that they also scored over 100 points in that game after having 99 the week prior against GWS. Did concede 106 though in that game, but Essendon aren't going to be able to do that against them here. Gold Coast have failed to cover their last 4 straight, but I think this game sets up as one that they definitely can cover. But I like them more so just to win the game. I think it's going to be that bit too strong for Essendon right now. Gold Coast have won and covered the past 2 versus Essendon, but Essendon have had a good record at home against Gold Coast, winning 6 of the past 7 and covering in 5 of those. There may be a little added motivation for Essendon after the way they lost to Gold Coast last year, but I just don't think it's going to be enough. I think Gold Coast is just too strong of a team right now and just are the better on both sides of the ball and can go down to Melbourne and pick up a win here before they have a home game against Collingwood. So hopefully they just don't have an eye on that game coming up the Friday night following. You just got to sometimes be cautious of that with teams. If they have a big home primetime game the following week, they can take their foot off the gas a little bit against in the game the week prior. I think they'll be good enough to win though. Just don't really want to lay the 21.5 points though. The past 3 between Essendon and Gold Coast have all gone over. Essendon, their last 2 games have gone over, and so has Gold Coast. I make a fair total for this game, 167.5. I am slightly leaning towards the overs as it currently stands, based off current form, but definitely towards Gold Coast's team total to go over as the preferred option. Then we have Geelong versus Richmond. Geelong, huge favourites, 60.5 points, $1.02 on the money line. Won't really spend too much time on this game. Geelong off the bye, 15 days rest leading in. Prior to the bye, they lost versus Brisbane by 41 points at home. They'll definitely be keen to get back out on the field and win this game against Richmond. That loss against Brisbane broke a 5-game winning streak for them. They've covered 4 of their last 6 and are coming up their lowest score of the season. I think Geelong will win this game and win it big. Richmond have lost 6 straight. They've conceded 122 or more points in each of their last 2, which has meant both of those games have gone up because of the amount the opponent has scored against them. Prior to that, they had 9 games straight go under the total. Geelong have won 4 of the past 5 versus Richmond and won 14 of the past 15 versus Richmond at GMHBA Stadium. They met there last season, but majority of their games haven't been there. It's only few and far between. A lot of those games back in the early 2010s and late 2000s. So that record at GMHBA is pretty old when I was going back there. But they did meet there in round 12 last season. Geelong won by 30 points, 99-69. The Cats had 24 scoring shots, 15 goals, 9, compared to just 10 goals, 9 for Richmond. Richmond led this game early. They led 49-33 at halftime, so 16-goal margin. And also, Geelong did kick 2 late goals in the first half there to get that margin back down from close to 30 points. And then in the third term, they went on with it, got the lead late in the third quarter, and then the Cats kicked 4 goals to 1 behind by Richmond in the last quarter to run out 30-point winners. The margin doesn't really depict how that game was played. Geelong just definitely getting on top late. However, they probably were a bit wasteful early on in the game. They had 61 inside 50s to just 38 by Richmond, so plus 23 inside 50 count. They really probably, based off of that, should have won the game by a lot more. Richmond were just very efficient with their inside 50 entries. Free kicks were even, stoppage clearances were even, Geelong's slight edge at the clearances, turnovers were even, marks inside 50 both heavily in favour of Geelong, but ultimately it was getting the ball in their forward half for the majority of this game. I just think Geelong could have won that game by a bit more. Slightly disappointed they only had 24 scoring shots from 61 entries, compared to Richmond 19 scoring shots from just 38 entries. They scored on 50% of their inside 50 entries, but how these teams are trending right now, I think Geelong will win this game. They'll want to make a statement. It's not often they lose at GMHBA Stadium, and they definitely wouldn't want to be losing twice in a row. So Geelong's win, I think they'll win big. This is a game where it potentially could be a big 80, 100 plus margin. We saw like Collingwood not really fully push West Coast last week. Following this, Geelong do play GWS in Sydney, and GWS did beat Geelong earlier this season back in round 9, which was at GMHBA Stadium. There is the chance that Geelong do have a little bit of an eye and may just do what they need to do to get the win here against Richmond and not go on with it. Currently, Geelong is sitting in 4th on the ladder. They have a pretty good percentage there in that race to make sure they secure a top 4 spot, and you've got Brisbane through to GWS all fighting for those positions. Geelong right now, their percentage is 127%. They definitely could do with a bit of a percentage booster. It's better than majority of the teams that they're going up against, but Adelaide have a comfortably better percentage, and so do the Western Bulldogs. So yeah, Geelong, it definitely wouldn't hurt for them to have a big win. This is probably the game where it could happen, as I think they'll want to make a statement. Just see how I approach this later in the week. Richmond also give up the most disposals to opposition players, so there could be ways to play this game around that as well. But expect Geelong to win comfortably. Brisbane Lions versus Port Adelaide. The Brisbane Lions favourites here, $1.22, minus 26.5 at home, where they've won 7 of the past 8 against Port Adelaide, and they've won the past 2 against them, 1 in Adelaide and 1 at the Gabba, by 79 and 48 points. The Lions have also won the last 5 against Port Adelaide at the Gabba and covered in 4 of those 5. They met in round 15 last season at the Adelaide Oval, and Brisbane won that game 152 points to 73. The first quarter was fairly even. Port Adelaide kicked the first 2 goals of the game, but really from that point, it was all Brisbane. They then went on and kicked 5 goals to 1 through the rest of the first quarter, led by 15 points. Then dominated the second, kicking 7 goals, 6 goals to 1 in the third, and then 5 goals to 4 in the fourth quarter. Still a 9-goal fourth quarter, but both teams getting a fairly even share. Brisbane ended up winning by 79 points. They had 37 scoring shots to 23, And looking at the statistics for both sides, 71 to 46 inside 50s, plus 25 in favour of the Lions. Free kicks were fairly even, a couple more or a few more for Brisbane. Stoppage clearances 28 to 10. That was where Port Adelaide were absolutely hammered at the stoppages. Turnovers were even. Both teams high marks. Brisbane had 124. And Port Adelaide were without the ball quite a lot. Had to make 74 tackles. Brisbane at home here. They come into this game off the bye. 15 days rest. Went down to Victoria and beat Geelong 92 to 51 prior to that. They should be good enough here to handle Port Adelaide, who are on the road. Port have had 9 days since their last game against Carlton at home, where they were 50-point winners. So they'll have confidence coming into this game. Whether that'll be enough to beat the Brisbane Lions, I don't think so. I don't think Brisbane are going to win this game by a big margin. My early thoughts looking at is Brisbane will win by around 4 goals. So I think the handicap right now at 26.5 is pretty accurate. Brisbane haven't really made a big habit of winning games by big margins this year, aside from the win against Geelong and against St Kilda earlier in the year. Majority of all their wins have been between 3 and 5 goals, so around that 18 to 30 point margin. And I think that's kind of how this game plays out. So probably won't be touching the handicap, but expect the Brisbane Lions to win. The past 3 between these two sides have gone over. We've had at least one team kick 123 or more in the last 3 meetings. And make a fair total for this game, 163.5. Should be fine conditions at the Gabba on the weekend. I would be leaning towards the over. Brisbane have points in them. They've scored 90 or 88 plus in 5 of their last 6 games. And also Port Adelaide, they're coming off 110 points last week against Carlton, who are a pretty good defensive side, but they have been a little bit hit and miss this season. But if we see a low to mid 160s total, then I'll probably be happy taking the over. And the last game on Saturday at Marvel Stadium, St Kilda against Hawthorn. The Hawks, $1.36 minus 18.5. And St Kilda have won 6 of the past 8 versus Hawthorn and covered in 5 of those 6 wins. 3 of the past 4, though, have been decided by 12 or less. Last season, down in Tasmania, Hawthorn won by 5 points. St Kilda were comfortable winners in the round 2023 matchup. And then Hawthorn won by 10 in the earlier game that season. St Kilda won by 12 in the round 2022 meeting. So a few close matches in recent seasons. St Kilda come into this on 3 straight losses and are on a 6-day turnaround returning from Perth. They've lost 9 of their last 11 games as well, and 8 of those 9 losses have been by at least 15 points. Hawthorn, on the other hand, though, have won 3 straight. They're coming off their biggest win of the season against North Melbourne last week, where they won by 85 points. That was also their highest team score of the season with 150. And that game went over the total and did break a 4-game under streak. To be honest, I'm surprised Hawthorn are $1.36 for this game. I was expecting sub 120s. When you look at the matchup of how these teams are coming into this, Hawthorn have turned a corner a bit after playing some good opposition, and they have been able to really beat up on the bad teams this season. A lot of these wins by the 35, 40 point mark. And so with this handicap only 18.5, I think it is too low. Expect Hawthorn to win comfortably. It's not an ideal situation for St Kilda. They have 1 day less rest and are returning from Perth after what was a pretty tough matchup against Fremantle, where they really pushed themselves to try and get over the line there. Expect Hawthorn to be too good. Hawthorn in the game last season where they won by 5 points. It was a fairly low scoring game, 58 to 53. Hawthorn 8 goals 10, St Kilda 7 goals 11. Basically 1 missed shot by the Saints was the difference between the two teams. But Hawthorn led for the entire game, so St Kilda were never in front at any stage in this game. They did get it back close. They kicked the only 2 goals off the final quarter, which got it back under as Hawthorn led by 15 at 3/4 time. So overall, pretty close game that really could have gone either way in the end. That was in round 9 last season, so kind of at the beginning of when Hawthorn had started hitting that form. Saints won the inside 50s, 52 to 44. Free kicks were even. Saints won the clearances 38 to 34. Slight edge at the stoppages, but nothing major. Turnovers were even. Hawthorn only had 76 marks in this game compared to St Kilda 117. Pretty big difference between the two teams there. Don't think that's going to continue this time around. Hawthorn are giving up easy ball, easy scores to teams. Their defense is right on at the moment. They've conceded 65 or less in each of their last 3 games. And why that is important is across that, like obviously North Melbourne, they kept 65 points. But Adelaide and Western Bulldogs, they were the number 1 scoring team in the competition going into that game against the Hawks, and they only scored 44 and 59 points. And the Bulldogs game was at Marvel Stadium, so there's no weather excuses. The Adelaide game definitely was the impact and not rain, just due to the dew and the cold temperatures in Tasmania. But yeah, Hawthorn's defense looking really strong. Can't see St Kilda. They currently rank all the way down in 10th position in terms of points for. I can't see them kicking a big enough score to beat Hawthorn here. Hawks attack rolling. St Kilda's defense struggling. They're conceding over 92 points per game. I think this is a comfortable win for Hawthorn. I don't think we really need to overthink this game too much. Then the first game on Sunday, we have Sydney versus Fremantle. Now, looking through a lot of these games, I've thought a lot of these favourites do look very hard to beat this weekend, but this is one game that I think could potentially go either way. Would have preferred it if Sydney were somewhat in a shot of winning, making finals, as them kind of being out of the race of finals contention basically takes it away a little bit. But Fremantle, I think, are a little bit vulnerable on the road, but my issue is also the odds have already adjusted for this, and I am surprised that Fremantle are $2.25 underdogs. So I think this is a good game for the underdog here. Fremantle, they've won 6 straight, they've covered 4 of their last 6, and they haven't conceded over 69 points in their last 6 games. So they're well positioned here. They have the opportunity to end Sydney's season, who they lost last week to the Western Bulldogs, which broke a 2-game win streak for them, but they've covered the spread in 3 straight. I just don't think Sydney are a $1.65 favourite team right now against a team who is in contention for the top 8. So I like Fremantle as the underdog here. I've won and covered the past 2 versus Sydney at the SCG. The away team has won and covered the past 6. Last time they met was in Perth in round 2 this season, and Sydney won that game 68-65. They had 23 scoring shots to 20 of Fremantle's. Fremantle, though, led the majority of the game. Sydney got in front late in the 3rd quarter, but Bailey Banfield got a goal, which got the Dockers back in front. They got a 10-point lead midway through the 4th quarter. 2 late goals from the Swans through Riley Bice and Joel Amadi got the Swans the win on the road there. I think there'll be motivation here for Fremantle to win this game. So yeah, definitely like them as an underdog. They had 4 extra inside 50s in the game earlier this season. More disposals slightly. Sydney definitely won the clearances pretty significantly at the stoppages, 27-15. That'll be the key area for Fremantle to turn around this time around. Turnovers were even. Sydney made slightly more turnovers. Marks inside 50 fairly even between the two sides, but right now, I don't think the Swans are deserving of being $1.65 favourites. They were in the game for the most part against the Western Bulldogs last week. It was a game of momentum. Teams went on run. Each team went on runs, and then it was stopped, and the other team came back. But wins against Port Adelaide and Richmond don't really fill me with a great deal of confidence. I think Fremantle are good value with the current price right now. I think this is too much of an overreaction to Sydney being in the contest in games of recent times. Well, for the total, where 6 of the past 9 head-to-head have gone under, I make a fair total 162.5. Sydney, they have had 3 of the last 4 go under. Fremantle, 5 of the last 6 go under. If I see a high 160s, I'd probably be leaning towards the under here, but it's not one that I really strongly want to play. It's just what I'm leaning towards for this game. And then last game, we have Adelaide versus Melbourne. The Crows are $1.23 minus 25.5. Big favourites here for a matchup where Melbourne have a really good record. They've won the past 4 versus Adelaide, and they've won 6 of the past 8 versus Adelaide at the Adelaide Oval, and they've covered the spread in 7 of those 8 games. Adelaide are 7-1 though at home this season, and Melbourne have lost their last 5 at Adelaide Oval against other opponents outside of the Crows. Melbourne go over there and play good against Adelaide. Don't do that though against other teams. Adelaide coming off a big win against Richmond. Melbourne though have lost 4 straight games. The last time they met, it was even early. This was round 4 last season, so it's been quite some time since their latest meeting. The Crows and Melbourne, it was close early for most of the first quarter and half the second quarter. Melbourne kicked 3 late goals before halftime, and then they got the first goal of the third quarter. which gave them a good break midway through that third quarter. They pushed the margin out to the low 30s. Adelaide fought back. They kicked 2 goals to none in the fourth quarter, but were definitely inaccurate. They kicked 2 goals 6, which had they kicked straight, could have bridged the margin a bit. Melbourne kicked 5 behinds in that last quarter. So both teams kind of wasted chances. Melbourne ended up winning by 15 points. They had 28 scoring shots to Adelaide 23. Both teams were really inaccurate overall for the whole game. And that accuracy effectively cost Adelaide the win, but also potentially had Melbourne kick straight. They could have won by more. Adelaide were +6 inside 50s, 54 to 48. Adelaide 21 to 9 free kicks. Melbourne won the stoppages 34 to 25. Adelaide won the centre clearances 12 to 7. Turnovers were even and low. Marks were fairly even. Adelaide slightly more in that game. Now, on current form, Adelaide should be winning this game based off how they're coming into this. They've won 4 of their last 5, just a 3-point loss against Hawthorn. They've been very good at covering the spread this season, 11 to 4 ATS record. They should be winning this game at home. I really can't see them dropping it. The only thing that concerns me is Melbourne's record against them. But Adelaide probably the play. Don't want to lay the 25.5 though, so I'll be looking at other ways to bet. Melbourne give up the 4th most disposals to the opposition, so expect Adelaide players should be able to generate plenty of the ball. I'd be cautious playing Melbourne players' disposals. Adelaide give up the least number of disposals to the opposition overall this season. But yeah, Adelaide should win, get the job done at home, and break that recent record that Melbourne have over them. So that's my early thoughts on how I'm playing the AFL this week, how I'm approaching betting on it. My goal with these videos and with sharing everything I'm doing on the AFL is to help make sure you're a profitable AFL bettor. It's so good to bet on the football each week and make money and do that right throughout the season, add that additional income stream. The link in the description will give you access to all the bet finder tools to analyze games and make profitable bets. Plus you get to see everything I'm betting in the AFL as well. Going along really well this season. Still plenty of rounds to go to keep on adding to our profit for the year. So definitely check that out. Thanks guys for watching. I really appreciate you guys watching these videos. Hopefully it's helping you make money on the AFL. Stay tuned for more. Make sure you subscribe. We're posting videos right throughout all the way to the grand final.